Good afternoon. This is call number 2021-11492 in the interest of Casey and Evan Jones. All parties and witnesses, please raise your right hand to be sworn. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, ma'am. Please state your name and your relationship to the children.
Brett Jones. I'm their mother.
All right. And representing the Attorney General?
Andrea Ea.
Court will note that the non-custodial parent is Cody Krasinski. Mr. Krasinski was personally served on November 20th, 2021 at 1:43 p.m. at 3210 Bay Oaks Harbor Drive in Baytown, Harris County, Texas. And he's not filed an answer or made an appearance. Is that correct, Ms. Eoff?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll proceed by default.
Thank you. Your Honor, we'd like to call Ms. Jones.
Okay.
Ms. Jones, will you please state your name for the record?
Brett Jones.
And will you please state the names and age of your children?
Case Jones, 2. Evan Jones, 2.
And your boys are twins, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And Mr. Krasinski is the father of your children. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Your Honor, at this point in time, the state would like to offer our Exhibit A. It's the DNA test results for both Case and Evan, showing that Mr. Krasinski is their father.
All right, Ms. Jones, you've had an opportunity to look at these DNA test reports,
Yes, sir, I have.
and you don't have any objection of me admitting these into evidence.
No, sir.
All right, then State's Exhibit A is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Jones, now that we know that for sure that Mr. Krasinski is your children's father, are you asking the court to establish you and Mr. Krasinski as joint managing conservators of your children?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you asking the court to designate you as the parent children's primary residence within Harris and contiguous counties?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And is it true that Mr. Krasinski thus far has had limited exposure to your children?
Yes, ma'am.
Has he ever kept your boys overnight?
Yes, ma'am. One time.
And how did that go?
When I went to retrieve them in the morning, their diaper had not been changed. They did not use the formula, but once, because I had it set out for each individual bottle, and they had only fed them one time overnight. And at that point in time, they were being fed every 2 to 3 hours because they were only so many months old. And they were, you can tell they had not been changed. They had spit up all over them, and they were crying when I showed up.
Okay. So do you feel like based on the one time you allowed Mr. Krasinski to have the children overnight, he was neglectful of them?
Yes, ma'am.
And your boys were born prematurely, is that correct?
Technically, they were full term, but they were at 37 weeks, which is considered full term, but they did not make it to the full 40 to 41 weeks.
And did Evan spend some time in the NICU?
Yes, ma'am. He spent 3 days for swallowing a lot of amniotic fluid, and it caused respiratory issues.
And even though he's now 2, you guys are still dealing with some medical conditions and respiratory issues with him. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. He has to use a nebulizer every once in a while. It's not asthma, but it is like a respiratory problem. He has a lot of allergies and issues with breathing.
And is it true that Case has some digestive issues that make using the toilet very difficult for him, and that is kind of an intense process y'all are dealing with right now?
Yes, ma'am. We take supplements that the doctor has recommended and prescribed. They also just went through a surgery. So
yes. And both children just had surgery last month. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am, on March 8th.
All right. And at this point in time, Mr. Krasinski has another child that's the same age as your boys. Is that true?
Yes, she is 13 days older.
And is it true that at one point in time, Mr. Krasinski admitted that he had shaken her in frustration?
Yes, I have the text message where he relays that he did that.
All right. So, based on what you know about his behavior with his other child, the experience you had where he was neglectful when you allowed him to have the children overnight, and the children's ongoing medical issues, are you asking the court to start with some supervised visitation in this order?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you asking the court to order that Mr. Krasinski have 20 supervised day visits to start, followed by 5 unsupervised visits until he's allowed to have a standard possession order?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when it comes to the financial aspects of your relationship, you and Mr. Krasinski lived together at one point in time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And at that point in time, you knew that he worked as a welder and he worked in construction and did a mixture of full-time and contract work.
Yes, ma'am.
And based on your understanding of his finances, is it reasonable to calculate child support based on a gross income of $2,482 a month?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it your understanding that Mr. Krasinski has one child that he is obligated to support via a court order and 2 biological children living in his home with him?
Yes, ma'am.
And are based on all of those facts, are you asking the court to order Mr. Krasinski to pay monthly child support of $378 a month and cash medical support of $149 a month?
Yes, ma'am.
And has Mr. Krasinski ever given you any sort of cash or other money to support the children?
No, ma'am.
Are you asking the court to award a retroactive judgment or a judgment for retroactive child support in the amount of $10,584, covering the period from January 28th, 2020 to today, to be paid back in the amount of $103 a month?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I have no further questions, Your Honor. I pass the witness.
All right, the court will approve the order as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.